Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Dead End, Paranormal Park, Episode 7. So, last time, we had quite a notable episode. Barney learned quite a lot, and is finally going to talk to his family. Hopefully we see some follow-up with that. But the episode itself was pretty simple, too. It was just Barney, being in line with logs and having his body possessed and everything, and a lot of shit going down with that. But then we also got this this character actor who we saw. I cannot remember her name, either her name or the name of the character she's portraying. My mind is blanking on it, but she is the person we saw in the cold open of the first episode, and she's been gone apparently an entire year. So now we find out she was trapped in this in-between realm, and now with the help of Barney and Norma and them, she's able to escape after a year. So that's going to be interesting if that's followed up on at all. And on top of that, we still have from a few episodes ago where Tema Lucas's sibling, I guess, was shown briefly and was going to get involved, but just hasn't yet. So there's a lot of setup going on right now. How is this season going to end? Where is this going to go? We still have a few more episodes, mind you, but I'm just very interested in where this is going. So we're just going to get into this, hope for the best, per usual. I have no idea where any of this is going, but let's see. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, welcome to Dead End Paranormal Park. We are finally in it. And that may sound confusing. We've been watching this series for more than half of the season so far, and obviously stuff has happened, but it's no, the series just truly began. This, let's be honest, everything before this, there was some great stuff, especially with the representation and all, especially with the supernatural elements, but no, the series just really began. That was phenomenal on so many levels. And yeah, I'm getting emotional over it. Shit. Jesus. You guys know I get emotional, not just over sad things or whatnot, but even over things that are just really cool to me or epic or things that really stand out. It's if it really just if it really hits me in a very big way, it's I get emotional over it. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but I do. Because it's it's not sad or anything. It's exciting. I'm hyped. But this episode was two things. It was a mystery with Norma's half of the episode, and it was a confrontation with Barney's half. And then it became a supernatural just thriller at the end. But we'll get into that. Let's talk about both halves. And it would be weird of me to not start with Barney's because of obvious connections there. This has been something that's been in the making since episode 1. You could say all of this entire episode, but Barney's character arc has been really well handled in terms of being trans. From the beginning, we see that there's issues with his grandmother understanding things. And as we go along, we find out that the true fear for him is not about his grandmother's bigotry, but about the idea that no one would be there to support him, to stand up for him. We see his biggest fear is just that. And now we find out for sure that it is stemmed from a very specific incident in which that exact thing happened. His family didn't stand up for him against his grandmother. And even now, they're making excuses. They're just saying, like, oh, she doesn't understand, and she's difficult, and we know that, and we still support you and everything. But it's like, as he said, that's the bare minimum. You're his parents. You're supposed to support him. You're supposed to side with him. That's your job as his parents. That's the bare minimum. That's required. Going above and beyond is what you need to focus on. You need to not just accept him, you need to stand up for him. You need to fight for him. To be willing to get into arguments over it. And even if it comes down to it, be willing to just throw away relationships because of it. As harsh as it sounds. And yes, I'm speaking from a lot of experience. I'm speaking from my own personal views on this. Because as a trans person whose parents are not super accepting and not anything beyond that, I don't even get that much. Like, it's implied in here through their dialogue about junk food. It's implied that Barney's parents helped him in his transition. That they supported him and have helped him, like, actually move it along. Not necessarily to every level, not necessarily to every degree, but they, like, again, presumably with, like, maybe hair care, maybe HRT, maybe they helped him get on that, maybe therapy and stuff, all kinds of things like that. There's a lot that goes into, a lot more than some people think, that goes into transitioning. Transitioning is not even always physical. Some people can't, or just are afraid to physically transition for multiple reasons. Transitioning can be something as simple as getting new clothes that match your identity. And with Barney being very young and this being his first job and everything, he would probably have needed his parents' help for that. And there's a lot of other things too. If he is on HRT, which we don't really have confirmation one way or the other on, he would definitely need their help getting that and everything. A lot of things. So he's saying, though, that it's not enough. That when it comes down to it, they're not standing up for him. They're not fighting for him against someone who's showing bigotry and hatred. And they're making excuses. And it's gross. It's extremely gross to see them doing that. It's not okay. And there are some times where I wish I had even that level of support. But yeah, it's not a good position. Much worse even with my family. So things are not great in that regard. Barney's anger and frustration and everything is perfectly valid here. He was willing to talk to them, willing to give them a chance, but as he said, the reason he ran away from home is that it didn't feel like a home to him. And until they make it feel like that again, he doesn't plan on returning. And I can't fault him for that. In fact, I think that's the right move. And it explains a lot. It explains why he wanted to move out. Why he wanted to get this job in the first place. Why everything has been going the way it has with his family. So we can see the pain that he's going through. We can see the misery. And luckily, there's so many people there who will fight for him and who will affirm him and will be there. He has a support network. But I can speak from experience, you still kind of want your parents to be in there. So yeah. I'll leave it at that for now, though. Clearly, that portion of the episode hit really close to home for me. And it's just, it was even maybe a little hard to watch. Again, just speaking from a lot of personal experiences with family not always having my back and me having to find a support network through friends. It's something I can relate to, and unfortunately something I go through pretty much every day. So, fun times. Episode of a supernatural cartoon making me super emotional because of personal shit. But I mean no exaggeration when I say that it is one of the most important scenes, or series of scenes, I guess, in any piece of animation. There have been queer characters in media, even trans characters, and it's been getting more and more common. But this kind of care, effort, realism, and emotion put into it is something special. It's truly something special. Then we had Norma's half. So Norma is trying to figure things out. She's trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with Pauline? What's going on with Jennifer Swan? What's going on with everything, basically? And she wants to solve the mystery, figure it out, because, this is kind of her fixation. This is what she's really hyper-fixated on and what matters to her. As she stated in this episode, she's, memorized all the ads and all of not Jennifer Swan, Pauline Phoenix's bodies of works, everything. And so it's like, this is literally her life at this point. And maybe it won't stay that way. Maybe things will change in that regard, but this is, at least for the moment, that important to her. And you see it at the end, when coming face to face with Pauline, the true Pauline, not just, it actually being her, but her real self, who she really is, as, using the term loosely at this point, a person. You know what I mean. She's a spirit. I guess she's still a person, but you know what I mean. You see how Norma's crying at it. She's legitimately broken. She doesn't even notice the others go into the TV. She's completely oblivious to everything around her because her entire life had just been turned upside down. Everything that she had focused on, everything that she had loved, everything that she had put her everything into, was just turned upside down and torn away from her. It's not about whether or not she was right or wrong about Barbara. It's about that her entire life was dedicated to Pauline Phoenix and her body of works. It was Norma's goal, her dream, to work at this park because of everything that she had known about it, everything she loved about it. She memorized her body of work. She memorized lines from these movies. She knew the people behind these roles. So when she sees that this person who she idolized, no cap, she fully idolized Pauline, to see how utterly wicked she is, to see her as a monster, not just as a ghost, but a monstrous person. That would be the worst feeling in the world. It would be like if I were to meet Dana Terrace or Eiichiro Oda or someone like that and find out that they were the worst person ever, and completely ruin my love for Owl House or One Piece. It would destroy me. I fully understand Norma's feelings here, her pain. Again, this was everything to her. For someone who is autistic, who hyperfixates on things, for someone who is for someone who understands Norma as a character very much, because I'm like Norma, because I am autistic, because I am someone who hyperfixates, because I have these social troubles. To see her heart break so heavily there, I understood exactly the emotions going through her head. And outside of just the examples I gave for things like that, you could say I currently hyperfixate on, there's an example I want to give here of something that was extremely important to me in a lot of ways. And when it came out and made very, very clear that the creator of that was one of the worst, it destroyed me. And yeah, if it's not clear, I'm talking about Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling. I grew up with Harry Potter. I grew up playing the games, reading the books, watching the movies. I was invested. I did the Sorting Hat quizzes. I did all of those other things. Get your Patronus quiz and all. I wrote fan fiction. I'm not even kidding. I wrote Harry Potter fan fiction. I drew fan art. I was invested in this series. Because through the series, I found characters who I saw myself in. And none more so than Luna Lovegood. For those who don't know the Harry Potter series, Luna Lovegood is a fucking weirdo. And I say that with the most absolute love. I mean that with love. Because I'm a fucking weirdo. And I saw myself in her. While not quite exactly the same, while not into the same kind of things necessarily, I saw a lot of myself in her, to the point where she was one of the main inspirations for me coming out. Which is ironic if you think about it. That one of my main inspirations for coming out, that for realizing that I'm a girl, was a character from a story, a series of stories written by someone who's a transphobic piece of shit. There had been years people were talking about J.K. Rowling in a negative light, and I ignored it. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to acknowledge that the author behind what had become an important series to me could be a terrible person. Even after I came out in 2017, I refused to acknowledge it. I refused to admit it. I got stuck in how important the series was to me and just ignored the obvious, not even red flags, it was beyond that even at that point. I just ignored it because I didn't want to admit it. And then eventually I couldn't anymore. With her tweets and her articles she wrote about it and everything, it's just, there was no ignoring how absolutely toxic and horrible she is. How she disguises it under this guise of feminism. And just says the worst kind of shit. And when it really hit me and when I really finally accepted it, I lost it. I cried. I bawled. Because I couldn't reconcile the fact that someone I looked up to, someone whose stories helped me come out as trans, someone who saw, or someone who created a character that I saw myself in so desperately, that it helped me realize who I truly am. I couldn't believe that someone who did all that would deny my existence, would deny the legitimacy of my womanhood. And the legitimacy of other people's, no matter what their gender, and try to use excuses of feminism to try and excuse it. It broke me. And as much as I adored Harry Potter, and I don't know if this is going to happen with Norma, as much as I adored Harry Potter and the Wizarding World franchise and all, when I finally accepted it, I knew that while I still had some love in my heart for this franchise and everything it did for me, I understood that I could no longer in good conscience continue to engage in it. And although, like, I haven't gotten rid of everything I have for it, because I don't want to just, throw away DVDs and shit. That's money wasted, I feel, but I don't know what to do with them, and it's like, I don't have them on display or anything, but I knew I had to leave that all behind and not engage with it anymore. No more watching the movies, no more doing anything that would give her money, no more playing games or thinking about it for the most part. If I see like a fandom page I'm a part of on Facebook post about it, I tend to unfollow that page. And I'm not going to try to force to tell everybody else what they have to do in these kinds of situations. But it was definitely the right move for me. And I've moved on, and I've moved on to other stuff. But I won't lie, I will still acknowledge that it does hurt still. That there are still things about that series, about that franchise, that I still look fondly upon. And although leaving it behind has allowed me to see a lot more issues with it than I originally even noticed, I mean, the anti-Semitism and racism and stuff that's within it, like, my God. Even despite all of that, there's still portions of it that I have to acknowledge helped me come out as trans and helped me find myself in a lot of ways. So there's still a lot that I struggle with. And I almost, as hard as it would be to watch, I do kind of hope that this series goes the same way, because I feel it while it will be hard to watch, while it would be really emotional, it's like it would be real too. But I barely actually talked about Norma's half of this. So she's trying to figure out what's going on with Jennifer Swan and how they disappeared in the first place. Badya helps out, and they're trying to, like, figure out if it's this Barbora chick. They're going around the park asking the impersonators, this janitor and everything. And it's soon revealed at the end that the janitor is actually Barbora. They figure this out after they start to work with Barney as well, after his entire thing with his family falls apart. And so they all figure that Pauline is the one truly behind everything, that she's the true enemy here who has caused it all. Jennifer Swan is seen, but they're kicked out because they're harassing her, kind of. And she kind of hints that, she's being forced to keep quiet too. Kind of goes in line with Pauline's catchphrase, does it not? So they try to figure it out otherwise, and that's when they realize that the janitor is Barbora. They find her back at Dead End trying to take out the TVs, and that's when Pauline comes into play. The ending of this episode is so just exciting that it almost makes me, it almost made me, I should say, forget about the emotional heaviness of Barney's part of the story at this point. But then it brings in Norma's emotional part of the story, and I'll get to that. Pauline reveals herself, attacks Barbara, because she doesn't want what's seen on the life insurance ad to get out. Barbara ends up being a distraction, allowing the others to escape through the TV, except Norma, who, yeah, she breaks. She's just in complete shock and pain and misery, and her world is turned upside down as she just stands there in tears until finally being saved in the end as well, leading to a cliffhanger as they've all gone through the TV. This series just stepped up to 11. Not just in the excitement of the ending, but the emotional heaviness of both Barney and Norma in this episode, and specifically how I directly connected to both. I've already been loving this series, but now I love this series. This show is important, and if this series ends up not getting a second season, if it ends up being canceled or just left to the wayside by Netflix like Glitch Text was, I'm gonna be so fucking pissed. Because this series, again, is super important. And it's like, if they fucking drop this series, if Netflix fucking gets rid of this series that is so positive and so helpful and so realistic about the trans experience and so much more, autistic experience and everything, if they drop this but keep shit like Dave Chappelle on their platform, like, oh my fucking god. This needs a second season. This needs however many seasons it takes to complete the story. I believe there's 2 volumes to the comics, 2 big volumes to it. I don't know if it's complete or if it's still ongoing. I don't know if, I don't know. But I really want this story to get its due on Netflix. I really don't want this series to go the way of Glitch Text or anything else that had been canceled or whatnot. It's too important. Yeah, and it's just, it's special. And I'm so happy I checked it out. And of course I was going to check it out. Trans protagonist, it's like that alone is enough for me to want to see it, of course. But I'm glad I'm also, has my camera been, I'm sorry if my camera's been off for a while. My webcam's been messing up a little lately. Yeah, sorry about that. I haven't even noticed because I was getting like emotional and like talking heavily. I apologize for that. Oh God, I don't even know how long it was out. I'm just gonna leave this here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tell me your thoughts down below. For now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.